Indira Ghose. I'm a professor of English literature based at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland. And I've been invited to Melbourne by the Center for the History of Emotions. But I'm delighted to be here again and to be given another chance to talk about my work in connection with emotions and to talk with colleagues about it as well. Well, I'm a Shakespeare scholar, and my previous work was on laughter in Shakespeare. And laughter is not an emotion; it's the expression of an emotion. But even there, but just by saying this, you realize how complicated it is, because it's the expression of what emotion we tend to think of pleasure and joy, but actually in an older period, laughter would be seen above all as an expression of malice. That's the way Plato would have defined. In fact, did define laughter. Laughter is always something which is linked to humiliating others, laughing about others. And looking at laughter and the emotions tied up with laughter led me to look at norms that were circulated in the early modern period about the things you should laugh at and things which are funny and which are not funny, which have changed considerably. And I tried to track down why the change had taken place, and it increasingly seemed to me bound up with codes of courtesy, of what is acceptable, not with codes of humor, not what is funny and not funny, but what is it okay to laugh about and what is it not okay to laugh about. And that led me to courtesy literature in a broader sense, in connection with the theater. I was just interested in seeing whether these norms about how you should behave were also reflected, were also worked into plays of the time, and the way, ultimately what I'm hoping to track is the way the theater might have shaped the way people actually behaved and expressed their emotions, but I'm not there yet. Courtesy in literature has been around actually for a long time, but it was always in connection with codes of chivalry and how you should act properly. And in the Renaissance, it got a sort of a new impetus in connection with actually one book which virtually launched this whole wave of courtesy literature, which was Castiglione's The Book of the Courtier. He was an Italian courtier who wrote a book which became a bestseller and was read in courts all over Europe. And he discussed the way the ideal courtier should be. And a lot of these codes of conduct that he wrote about were then picked up by other authors and were sort of circulated first in court society and then in society at large, because this coincided with the spreading of literature through print. So people could read this, even people who were not at court could read how to behave properly, and this is something that had an influence on social norms in a wider sense. Well, one of the key ideas in this whole wave of courtesy literature is to help people accommodate to each other, to adapt to other people. And perhaps, and I think this is of interest in connection with emotions, because we tend to think of emotions as a very personal thing, as sort of us and our gut feelings, whereas it is a lot about how we interact with each other as well. And I find it of particular interest to look at the way we can shape our emotions to foster social interaction, instead of just thinking about emotions as something about the way we personally feel in a certain situation. I think our whole model of identity should maybe be shifted more towards social identity than to just sort of a gut feeling identity. Well, I'm a literary scholar, not a historian. So my focus wouldn't be on how did people really feel at the time. That's not what you look for in literature anyway. Literature is not a mirror of reality. It doesn't tell you, the way things were. It tells you about the way people imagine things. It's about literature sort of explores people's fantasies and anxieties and the way they talk about themselves. So it's interesting for us to look back, say, at an older culture to see how societies talked about emotions at a certain time, and for us to notice both continuities and radical changes. If you look at, say, Shakespeare's work, emotions such as jealousy, you look at Othello, or the play I'll be looking at today, Much Ado About Nothing, and you see that the anger connected with a woman being immoral, that would lead to a violent sense of anger that we today would no longer find acceptable. So to return to your question, how do we trace emotions of the past in literature? It is the way, what is of interest is the way literature from an earlier period discusses and explores emotions of that culture. And that is what we have access to. We don't have access to the way people actually felt at the time. The history of emotions is important for us because we need to understand the history of human beings to understand ourselves. Without looking at the way emotions have been understood in the past and have been constructed in various cultures, we cannot actually understand ourselves today. If we're interested in identity and in social identity, we need to look at emotions because that's the way we express ourselves to each other.